What's up YouTube? Welcome back to another video. I feel like that was like a really aggressive intro. What's up YouTube? My name is Spencer Berke. Welcome back to another video. Today's a big video, I'm not gonna lie. What I'd recommend is that you get maybe your favorite drink, maybe your favorite snack, maybe even like dinner or lunch or whatever you're doing right now. Sit down, have a place that's comfortable, get the audio at the perfect level. I'll make sure my audio is at good level so something comes out of nowhere. But today's a very special day because we are doing the full rod bearing video that's going to go over everything about rod bearings, why they happen, what mine look like, the replacements, and how to do everything from top to bottom, and I believe motor mounts too. I actually just did new ARC8s yesterday and federal RSRRs, which I'm really happy about. So I just got that video out, and today we're going to go over to Precision Dynamics and do everything. So this is going to be a long video. If you're here because you have an M3 and you want to learn about it, or you've already done rod bearings, you don't know what they look like, you don't know how it works, maybe you dropped your car for the shop and you didn't know even what happened, or you're just doing research on buying an M3 and the most important thing that you have to do for these cars. So I'm gonna stop talking and we're gonna go to Precision and we're gonna go ahead and get this whole day started because it is gonna be a long day. So without further ado, let's go. We are off. It is currently 61 degrees, and for anybody who complains to me, that is cold. Hey! What's up, dude?
What up?
What up, bro? How are you, brother? So as you can see, it's a little bit chilly here. I don't have a jacket, so I was gonna rock the beanie, but this is my baby with the new ARC8s on it. Going in for the rod bearings. Still getting used to these Federals. These tires are super loud, but you know, it's all right. You got Mike's car right here. So sick. Fancy. They come in this thing too. This looks like a big vape thing. Doesn't it look like a vape thing?
No, it looks like bullets.
So these are the bearings right here. So we're back again.
Yep.
For more surgery on my car after we've done a million things. Because we have a lot to go over today. We have a lot going on. So the idea behind today's video is I want to educate everybody on the A to Z process of rod bearings. While we're doing them, we'll explain why things go bad, what happens, the symptoms and things like that, and why I would say every S65 should always have these replaced.
And S85.
Okay.
And S54s have.
So BMW motors tend to have a rod bearing issue.
Correct. All the M's, excluding the new F80s, and hopefully not the new G80.
Yeah, hopefully not.
But ever since the E46, they've had issues with bearings, connecting rod bearings. They've always had that issue. The one that was the worst out of all of them was the S65, which is on these M3s, E-chassis. What happens is the tolerance is a little too tight, and there's some old bearings to show you.
We'll get into detail for sure because I want to show mine as well too. But I think just so we can start the video off from the beginning, I want to make it where this video, if let's just say that somebody has never even heard of rod bearing issue, and then the guy who has done rod bearings 10 times, I want to find a video that we can make that explains everything.
Everything, yeah.
But nothing that's like too crazy, but I think we can make a long format video just to educate people on why everyone says like to do rod bearings.
Yeah. So the issue with this, the tolerance is a little too tight. With that issue, the bearings wear down much faster. What potentially can happen is your bearings can spin, and once it actually spins, you have to change out your connecting rod and crankshaft and essentially rebuild your bottom end.
So it's an engine replacement essentially.
Yeah, and it's not cheap. These motors are still going for like $10,000–$15,000.
Yeah, and you can pay $2 to $3 grand.
2 to 3, maybe some, depending on where you are. But most places in California is like 2 to 3 grand. Anywhere else, I know that in the East Coast they're paying about 5 grand.
Wow, for rod bearing replacement. Yeah. Jeez, that's crazy. And if you're able to, what does this usually go for if someone came in here for like a retail price? Like what would you charge?
Retail price, you're probably looking at out the door for, you know, new oil pan bolts, gaskets, oil, motor mounts, the usual stuff that you do with it, since you're already there. Total would be about 3,000, give or take.
And your recommendation is that since you're already pulling so much out, that you should do the other things like motor mounts.
Yeah. So you'll see. I'm sure your motor mounts are gone.
Mine are bad because my car still shakes.
Yeah. So
I know
usually when the motor mounts fail on these motors, it's always on the driver's side. Just because it's a V, the engine load is actually going this direction. So it's lifting on the driver's side and it separates that motor mount.
Okay.
90% of the time, every time we do rod bearings, the motor mount's already completely failed. People just don't realize it. But what happens is it actually separates completely, and the whole time your engine's idling, the weight's down on it, so you don't really realize it. And then once you get it to load, it lifts it up and it goes back down. So a lot of times when you give a light load, you'll feel like a little vibration, but people think it's normal.
Yeah.
It's not.
So that's something you want to go through when you do rod bearings.
Yes, like 100%. Like you're already there, you might as well
do it. I gotcha.
So you want to drop the subframe again?
No, definitely not. So in this video, I want to show everyone what we can do, and I'm very curious to see what my rod bearings look like. Yep. And my car currently is at 69,000 miles.
Yeah.
So I'm not too worried, but I've seen stories at 20,000 miles. So only one way to find out. So all right, let's dig into it. So I've been driving like this for the last 3 weeks, and for some reason this fell out. What happened, Mike? I don't know what this is. What is this stuff?
This is your under tray. It actually has a little duct right here.
Yeah. So I've been scraping here, and eventually it just ripped off. My apartment complex, I leave every morning, is really, really bad. So I hit it twice every morning.
Clearly.
Yeah, so you can see I have put this thing to use.
Clearly.
But this is what took the beating, because I heard this a lot.
Yeah, it looks like you were scraping in the center right here.
And eventually it just gave out.
Yeah, and eventually it ripped off. Yeah, normally in California you don't have to worry about it, but now you're going to Florida.
I know.
All right, so a lot of times you guys get a lot of vibration, especially for you.
Yeah.
Which people don't realize is with the motor mount, just like I was telling you earlier, when it fails, it starts to collapse on itself, and the motor actually sits lower than it should be. And then what happens is the oil pan, which is right here, hits against the seat shield. And right over here, if you want to come around and show them, you can see how tight the tolerance is right now. It's like, what, 2 millimeters right there?
And that's a sign that the motor mounts are starting to give out.
Collapse. Okay. Yeah. So that's a vibration right there.
Because I did have somebody DM me and say that when I posted that picture under my car, like, yo, your motor mounts are shot. And I'm like, how do you know that?
Yeah, you can just see it right here.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if you see that in your car, your motor mounts are done.
Yeah, that, and obviously with this, same thing, your pan, your transmission pan, it's sitting a lot lower than it should be.
Yeah, and I'm scraping pretty bad right here.
Yeah. Just a little.
Not bad.
I think we just did this recently.
Not too bad. It's not like dark.
These guys are Flavor of 3D. This is my favorite energy drink from Christian Guzman. He made this company. I sold this guy a Lambo a long time ago.
Oh shit. I saw this right up. Thank you, Spencer.
Sure, you're welcome, bro.
Appreciate it.
No worries.
This looks like lime. Don't mess with my mountain, dude. Alright, now I got energy.
3D. I want to test my knowledge. So from what I know, I think that this car takes 8.5 quarts of oil, but when you do rod bearings, it's 9.
Close.
Close?
I mean, you got the numbers right, but it's liters, not quarts.
Liters. Okay, liters. So 8.5 liters when you do an oil change.
Correct.
And then it's going to be 9 when you do a rod bearings.
Yeah, because we're completely draining out the oil pan.
So when you do rod bearings, you want to get as dry as you can.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, you're already there. You might as well drain it all out. And then usually inside the oil pan, there's a little bit of buildup, dirt, metal shavings. Not saying, you know, from wear and tear.
Yeah.
It's normal. Normal to have metal shavings. So we actually like to just clean it out completely.
I was close.
Fresh oil.
I was close.
You were very close.
I was almost at gallons.
Yeah.
That would have been a lot.
If it was quarts, it's 9.78 quarts for 1 liter.
See, that's what I didn't know. Mark, what is this?
It's the engine support bar. So basically it's going to hold up your motor while we take off like your subframe, motor mounts and stuff on the bottom.
So if you didn't have this would just fall out.
This would just drop.
The whole engine would just fall out of the car.
Videos?
Oh, where they fall out?
No, where people use like wood and created their own.
Oh no!
Yeah, they use 4x4s, stack them right here, and run 2 4x4s across. And like, dude, it's.
I mean, how much do you think this motor weighed?
You're going to be supporting the motor and the transmission.
Oh, so you got a lot of
the
weight.
Transmission's only mounted on the rearwards, so this is probably with fluids, probably about maybe 1,500 pounds.
That's a lot of weight to risk.
Yeah.
So you want to use the right tools.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing you want is, you know, whole motor drop on your head.
Yeah, I don't think I want to do that today.
So using almost no force. See, like from here to here.
Okay.
You see the distance on there.
Yeah.
So I'll show you where it's supposed to be.
So you're pulling the motor up right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep in mind, there's not that much leverage.
Yeah.
So your motor is supposed to sit.
I can see it coming up a lot.
Yeah, it's supposed to sit right about here.
So
we just raised it about an inch.
My motor was sitting an inch lower than where it should be.
Should be.
And let me ask you this. So people who follow me on my channel, they probably watched the fuel breather valve video, which it did fix my problem.
Yeah.
But there was still vibration. Is that vibration from this problem?
Motor mounts.
So this is what the vibration could be?
Yes.
Okay.
No, not could be. It will be.
It will be.
It will be.
Okay.
100%. So there's a little trick right here. You just put a rag. And you take out the filter, and it catches all the oil so you don't make a mess.
Oh, because when you pull that up, oil will come out?
Yeah, all of it.
Really quick, what's the first thing you do? You do the engine hoist? Oh, you empty out all the oil first.
I drain the oil and then take off the filter. It's going to drain more right now. You usually want to take out the filter first and then drain the oil. But we're going to take out the pan anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
The sequence that we're doing. So, filter's actually pretty clean, so.
Good. Yeah, it was done, I think you guys did it 2 or 3 months ago.
Damn, oil is still hot.
So low warm.
Yeah, so I just leave the filter in here. I lift it up and let it drain, but I just put it back in.
One thing too, you want to let the car cool down, obviously.
Yeah, so you want it to cool down so I don't burn myself.
Easier to work on.
Yeah, and then too, just so when we take off the connecting rod caps, it doesn't warp. Hey, have her take off the wheels.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Good work. Nice. Yeah, send me the invoice. So now that the motor's up, you can see. Oh, dude. Okay, Spencer editing this showed the clip of it before. That's insane. That's pretty drastic. So now you can see there's actually space between there. So it was a good ½ inch to an inch off.
Yeah.
I want to see these motor mounts. I want to see how bad they are.
Technically, 109% light. It looks like it's already separated.
Is it?
So this is your lower control arm bolts. So what I like to do is actually remove the bolts out of here, and here, and remove it out of here, including out the outer tie rod from the knuckle. Then I drop the subframe, and then I pivot the subframe off of the steering rack so your alignment doesn't go off. So keep it as close as possible. It's off. We got one more right here. Okay.
So what are those 2 bolts exactly again?
So technically, this is the forward lower control arm, but technically the correct term is caster arms. And then this would be the lower control arms right here.
So just to go over it one more time, what were the things that you just removed?
Yeah, so I just removed the bolts from here to here that connects the lower control arm and the caster, or the forward lower control arm, to the subframe. And then we're going to get those arms off. And once we get these arms off, get the sway bar off of here, drop these 2 out of here, then we're going to lower down the subframe. And then once we lower down the subframe, remove all the hoses right here. And then we can actually remove the subframe out of the car. Then we'll drop the oil pan and get the rod bearings out.
Oh, it's raining outside. Yo! What's up, brother? How are you?
Good,
Welcome back to the USA.
Dude, I can't believe we're freaking leaving. You can see it in my eyes.
I'll always trust a mechanic that knows this song.
Yeah, this is your subframe that holds up the motor. We removed all the bolts. There's 6 bolts in total up here. That's 18s. Then we have 2 right here, 1 here and 1 over there. Then we took off the nut that holds onto your motor mount. And then now we're dropping this after we got all the arms off. In the front, there's all your cooler lines, power steering lines, transmission lines. And then once we lower this down, take it out, pivot out of the way, which you guys will see. Then we'll have access to the oil pan. Once this is off, well, we gotta take this off too, actually. And then plug a couple sensors here. But
So that's a subframe you're taking off right now.
yeah, subframe here, and then oil pan's right above it. I mean, essentially, this is what supports your whole engine and transmission.
Yeah. So what's happening right now is that the hoist up top is holding all that
Correct.
pressure instead of the subframe.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes
Well,
sense.
holding it up and essentially replacing this.
Yeah.
Temporarily, of course.
And then we'll see the motor mounts.
I mean, technically, you see it right now.
Yeah, I can see them. I want to see them pulled out. Oh, they look bad. That is not good.
Hey, don't touch my green one though. Yeah.
That was your
I did.
Get him.
I'm moving out of this side. Alright, Henry, got the other side of it?
Spencer, you're getting the shots, dude. I'm getting the shots. I'm getting the smooth shots, bro. I'm on an office chair getting these smooth shots. So bad, dude.
Anything for the shots.
I'm getting the smooth shots, bro.
We're over here trying to be serious.
I saw your face break mid-part, just like trying to get that out.
There we go. Alright, back. Oh, strong guy. This is your steering rack, rack and pinion, whatever you want to call it. But it's essentially your steering rack. So when you turn the wheel, it actually pivots this arm right here.
Oh, okay.
Which actually moves it left and right.
Okay.
So
And you have to pull this out?
No, we don't remove this.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you're using like a hanger?
Yeah, move it out of the way. So this is the one that's weak. Once we completely remove it, you'll see, but it's actually sunken. Actually, here, I'll show you. Look.
So you can just rip it off, right?
I could, yeah, but I'm not going to.
Okay.
You can see it.
Yeah, that's not what we want. That's not supposed to be holding the engine up.
Stronger. This one doesn't take as much load.
Okay.
But you can see this one's it's on there.
Yeah.
So if you want to look at the top, you got a light with it. So if you look at the top right here, where it's actually bolted to the motor mount bracket, I tried to separate it. It's on there. See that?
Yeah. So that one's relatively okay.
Yeah. It's always this side, the driver's side.
See the driver's side comparison.
So this one over here.
Yeah, that doesn't look normal. And that's holding up my engine.
Yeah.
So this is what. That's so bad, dude.
It's about to come off right.
Yeah, there's a little vibration there.
I see you eye to eye.
Hey, if we need to settle this, we can do it on camera. Let's go. Hey, step up, homie.
No, we step right here.
Is that just my transmission cover?
Yeah.
So we are underneath my car. This is transmission.
This is the one that holds up this bracket for the line. Instead of unplugging it all, I just remove these and move it out of the way. Okay. So these two right here goes to your O2 connector, which is right here. So essentially your O2 harness. And then this one's your oil level sensor right here. I removed this one out of the way.
So that's what will tell you when you have low oil.
This measures it. So this is your tensioner right here for your belt.
Okay.
This would be your AC belt. We remove this out of this bracket. The T30s are out of here. There's a 13mm bolt that connects from here to here. Pop this off. I'm gonna get a 10mm, pop this one off now, and then this bracket comes out. And then I'll go next to these two 10s that holds up this bracket for the oil cooler lines. And then after that, we'll just remove all these T30s. They're all T30s.
Okay.
Back here, there's 4 bolts, or yeah, 4 bolts, right? Yeah, 4 bolts.
Yeah.
One here, one above here, then one more on the opposing side of it. These are E12s. There's a couple hidden ones that are in here that people don't realize. And then more back here. Well, no, it's gonna drop the oil pan, then we'll be able to explain it. So, put it straight on. Capture it. So as you can see, we already drained the oil earlier, but there's still a bunch of oil.
So you let it drain for a good 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And this is still what's left in there.
Yeah.
So that's why you want to let it go as much as you can.
Yeah.
Okay.
And on top of that, that's why we put a 9. So 0.5 liters more.
And now that we can see up there, that's the key point area, huh?
Yeah, so let me get a light. Inside of here, now on this side, so this one's the oil pickup tube, or oil pickup, and then we have the panels. So you have two systems right here.
Okay.
We're going to remove these pickup tubes right here, and then inside of here there's a little filter. That's the we're going to remove these two out of the way, and then right here is actually your crankshaft, which is burning hot.
Still hot.
Crankshaft's here, and if you look at this one right here, this is your connecting rod right there. You have one here, one right here. So we're going to pop off these caps. It's right here and here. Once we remove those two, then we can actually remove the bearings inside of there.
And that's where we can see them?
Yes.
All right, let's do it.
Oh!
Hey! Ah!
So what I have here is a 1/2 inch ratchet, a long one for more leverage, and then The crankshaft bolt is a 34 millimeter. What we're going to do is we're going to spin the motor, rotate it. I like to start off in the back, so this would be cylinder 6 and 8.
So what's this process exactly?
So what we're doing is we're going to rotate the motor so that this is perfectly centered right here.
Okay.
This is where we want the connecting rods to be facing. The 2 bolts for the forward one and the back one to be centered in the middle. Okay. So we can access these 4 bolts here, 2 here, 2 here. But I'm going to rotate it so I can start on the back. I'm just going to keep rotating it.
So you're moving the pistons, right?
Yeah, and the crankshaft. Rotate it until you can see the bottom.
So you're doing this to access the bolts, correct?
Correct. So this is how the motor spins when you're driving. It rotates like this. So now you can actually see these back here. I gauge it from right here. This is the center of the motor, right there. Okay. So we're gonna try to get these 2 bolts right there in the middle. Standing from the front, you can actually just eyeball it and see. Right about here. So that's where we want it. I'm going to remove the ratchet out of the way. 12.12. That's how it looks. Crack them loose. Like that. Like that. You saw how this one just separated right here? So this is where we want it. These are, the design of these are actually, they make it in one piece, cast, and they actually break it apart. Now they're labeled and stamped with numbers to match. They can only be installed on the same connecting rod. You can't flip them. I mean, you could try, but it won't see properly. So it's a cool design. Tap on this end of it right here to separate. Actually, you want to come over here and take a look at this?
Yeah, that's it.
So it looks like it's one piece, right? But it's not. Tap on it.
And it splits apart.
And then it's labeled. You can see the number. So this one's 568 down here. 568.
And just as a basic explanation, what are we looking at exactly right here?
So right here is the connecting rod. It's together one piece. These are the connecting rod bolts that we're going to be replacing. Now we're going to separate the 2. Once I pop these off, you will see underneath it, or above it, technically, right here. And there's your bearing right here.
That looks worn to me, doesn't it?
It's lightly worn. It's nothing too crazy.
So this is an infamous rod bearing right here?
Correct.
Okay.
So let me put this down.
Once we clean it up, I'm sure you can see it more.
Yeah, so we can actually just pop this off by pushing it like this.
Okay.
And there's your bearing. So let me wipe it down now. So
okay.
So
there's the bearing, and that, honestly, to me, well, if you had to be honest, from a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is that? 10 being really bad.
Not that bad.
It's not that bad?
No,
oh, okay.
not that bad.
That's typical wear then?
Typical wear, yeah. Okay. It makes me wonder if it's been replaced.
Really?
This one is always the one that's the worst one.
Why is that? Because it's closest to
the back. It just absorbs a lot more vibration.
And the wear on the back too, is that normal?
This is normal, yeah, no matter what. It looks like it's been replaced. Just to give you a comparison of yours versus another LCI.
Are those copper?
No, these are LCI as well.
Oh, they are LCI.
Yeah.
So those ones are super worn down.
Super worn.
How many miles are on those, you think?
This guy had 122,000.
Gotcha. And mine has 69,000 miles.
Yeah.
So that's double.
Yeah. So what happens is over time with the bearings, actually this is perfect to comparison.
Yeah.
So how it works is the bearings are supposed to match from top to bottom. Like this. But it has to be perfectly circular because that's where the crankshaft is going to be. Now what happens is over time it starts to wear down like this one. It's super worn down, it loses material, and it starts to collapse on itself. You can actually look at this too right here. It's not perfectly centered. There's actually a gap right there.
So after, at a certain time, that could keep collapsing and give out completely.
Yeah, so that's exactly what it means when people say spun bearing. So it starts to collapse more and more, and eventually it goes above it like this, and then it goes below it, and it spins the bearing.
And that's when you have catastrophic failure.
Yeah, that's where you got to replace a lot.
I understand that.
So.
And then if we can, let's just back up a little bit. What is a rod bearing?
So rod bearing is essentially literally exactly what it is. It's an actual bearing. The design of it is to allow a metal on metal surface. There's oil channels inside your crankshaft, which are, it's kind of hard to see. I gotta pop this off.
Okay.
Let me just push this up. Right there. See that hole?
Yep.
That's an oil channel. So every time you rotate the motor, it picks up oil, goes through that little channel. It lubricates the bearing right here So it's no longer just metal on metal. There's always lubrication. This is designed to wear down over time because it is metal on metal, but you have a light, thin layer of oil to lubricate it. These usually, every car, doesn't matter what it is, you got to replace it usually around 100,000 miles. That's recommended, no matter what.
And as far as, so if you look at the block on a V8, and then where the pistons sit, where do these sit in the engine?
Yeah, so these bearings, there's actually connecting rod bearings, which is between the crankshaft and then the connecting rods. Now the connecting rods connect to the piston above it. So there's bearings here that's sandwiched right between this connecting rod and the crankshaft. And then there's also main bearings, which are up here.
They're up higher?
Yeah, okay. Up here. So you gotta take off the bed, which this whole thing has to come off of that. But the crankshaft also has bearings between this block and as well as the crankshaft itself.
So right now we're looking at the bottom of the pistons.
Correct. The bottom of the pistons, which are the connecting rods that essentially just bolts the pistons to the crankshaft.
So when you're running your engine, what's happening is there's movement going on, and there's not enough lubrication at certain points on rod bearings, and that's why it's metal to metal.
Correct.
And then they wear down.
Yep.
And then they give out eventually.
Yep.
Okay, that makes sense.
So just to give you guys an idea of how it works, for you guys who don't understand how engines work, on these cars, how it works is there's a crankshaft. They are offset where the connecting rods go onto. So every time the motor rotates, it's going to either push the pistons up or pull it back down. So while it's revolving and spinning around, it's going to constantly move the connecting rod, because the connecting rod is going to be in one position at all times, right? It's literally going to be going up and down, just like this. Up, down, but the crankshaft will be spinning around inside of it, just to pull it down or push it back up. So that's why you need bearings in there. If not, it'll be metal on metal, or damaged stuff.
And so that's rod bearings in a nutshell.
Yep.
Okay.
So we're just taking it all apart. Comes with the kit. This is going to be assembly grease. We're going to apply it to the threads, just so that we can apply the proper amount of torque, lubrication, so it's not dry.
And those are the new connecting bolts, right?
Connecting rod bolts.
Okay.
Yes. These are your old ones. So I'll explain to you the difference between the OEM ones versus these. Like I'm putting on toothpaste. Can never put too much grease. So we're going to do that, just lubricate it a little bit. And yeah, that's it. So the difference between these bolts versus the original bolts is these are the new ones, they're forged. That's one thing. So these are, they're strong, they're durable, but they're definitely not forged. You can actually tell the difference. See the difference in size, how much bigger it is, how much taller it is, all of that comes into factor. Now, if you actually weigh it out, sorry Spencer, but your hands are gonna get a little dirty. I want you to feel the weight of this.
Okay.
It's a little lighter.
Yep.
Versus this tiny bolt.
Oh yeah.
It's heavier.
Definitely.
So
it has more like density to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now the difference between these bolts and this is the OEM ones are stretch bolts. You can see threads all the way down here. When you actually tighten it, they start to stretch apart. That's normal. It does two things. One, it absorbs a lot more of the vibration, so that it kind of helps for wear and tear, but it also allows it to kind of expand over time from vibration, which is going to allow it to dampen it, so you don't take too much impact on the bearings. But with these bearings, with the proper specs, we don't need to have that cushion. These are forged, and they're torqued down to 54 foot-pounds, or 55 foot-pounds, sorry. And then these, on the other hand, are torqued down to 25 newton meters, and then you do 130 degree of angle. And then you gotta do it 3 times.
So these are set up and ready to go.
Yeah.
There's a process behind those.
Yeah,
Okay.
these are annoying to do, but that's the difference between the two bolts. Much more durable, much stronger, non-stretch bolts, and they actually just sit in there, stay in one position all the times. These stretch bolts, eventually they start to lose the tension, and then, also as well as absorbing. So that's why we prefer to just change them out.
Sure. And are these all my old rod bearings?
These are the new ones that we're about to grease. These are old ones here. I'm about to actually pull out your other top one, so you want to take a look. I go right here, between here. I push here, and I push above it. This is actually your connecting rod, if you can actually see it. I'll push it up, and then let it hang. Now you can see it right here. And then I just push it aside, and the bearing, and it comes off.
There you go, there's a rod bearing.
Yep.
Are they all looking pretty similar as far as wear?
So this one's a little bit more worn, nothing crazy, but you can see how it's worn down one spot.
Yeah, and that's where the friction was.
Yeah, so this is where it's starting to damage it and wear down, and it's going to start collapsing because of that.
Okay.
So it's supposed to wear evenly, as you can tell it's not.
There's just one spot where it keeps hitting.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like there's no wear here, no wear here, it's all right here.
So what is this stuff here? Is this your hair product?
Yeah,
what
this is pretty much what I use for wax. So we use Redline assembly lube right here.
Okay.
This is going to pre-lubricate the bearings because when we first install them, there's no oil whatsoever on it. So we're going to apply a coating of lubrication on there. That way it doesn't wear it down instantly or spin a bearing. You have to have lubrication no matter what.
Just so it's not dry right off
exactly.
the bat. Okay.
The last thing you want to do is install bearings and it spins on you.
Yeah, there goes another rod bearing job again.
Yep.
And an engine.
Same thing with this. You can never have too much grease. You can apply as much as you want. I prefer to put a significant amount.
Can you explain how you can only remove a certain amount at a time?
Yeah, so how it is the rotation of the motor. You can only have 2 connecting rods and 1 bank, technically, just to say. 1 bank is what I would call it, but it's not. It's 2 connecting rods because it is a V that goes into 1, allowing it to be at the bottom dead center. At all times, you can't have all of them at the same, bottom dead center or top dead center. Only one of them can. So we got to rotate the motor to bottom dead center. And then we can remove 2 at a time.
So it's
actually, you can take a look.
2 at a time, right?
2 at a time at all times. So you can only have 2. So it's gonna be these 2, that's gonna be the first one.
And then you go back and rotate it.
Yeah, then there'll be this one next.
Okay.
And then the next one after that will be this one. And then we'll go back to this one.
Why go to that one?
That's just how it is, the design of it.
Oh, that's the positioning?
Yeah, positioning.
Would that be positioned in the crankshaft?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you could rotate it the opposite direction, but I don't recommend it.
Yeah.
I would prefer to always just rotate the motor one direction no matter what, so you don't apply too much slack on the timing chain, potentially damaging stuff.
So these are little secrets a lot of people may not know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you can always go in one direction, even if it's the opposite direction of the revolution of the engine. As long as you keep going that same direction, you'll be fine. Just so that there's always like that same amount of tension on one side of the chain,
okay,
rather than flipping it back and forth.
Makes sense.
Now we have the new connecting rod bearing, right? So this bearing is the upper one, which we pushed the connecting rod out of the way right here. So what I'm going to do now is we install it on here. It's a very, very tight fit. So once I actually get it back on, there's a little tab right over here. If you can zoom into this.
Yeah,
actually,
I'm zoomed in all the way.
So right here, there's a little tab. Can you see this?
Yep.
So there's the tab right there that goes into there. It's a little notch.
Okay.
So it only goes in one way, but this is to basically retain it from moving side to side. In the case
can you move your hand so we can see in there real quick?
Yeah.
So right in there is where it sits.
Right
yeah,
here.
I can see it perfectly. Okay, got it.
All right, and then now we're going to reinstall. And get it into the notch.
So that notch is what holds it in at this position?
Yeah.
Okay.
So get it on, push it on, and it's in.
Look at my lens on my camera.
Oh, yeah. I was gonna say you should be
Dang
careful.
Okay, action again, we're back.
So now we got the bearing inside of here. You can see it right here.
Yep.
We're going to lift it up, and I have small hands, so I can actually do this. I'm going to reach both hands in there and pull connecting rod back down until it sits onto the crankshaft like that.
So now that one's back installed now.
Yeah, that one's reinstalled.
If the rod bearing didn't have that notch, it would fall out, right?
Yeah, well, no, it's a very tight fit. The notch is to just get into position for 1, centered, so it's not offset.
Mm-hmm.
That way when you reinstall it, you don't sandwich it between each other. And then 2, it's also designed to kind of hit each other, so it's harder for it to spin because it's like a little tab that's going to retain it. Bro. And we're going to reinstall the other one. And we're just like kind of feeling it out, you know?
This is all by feel, huh?
Yep, all by feel. I mean, once you got your hands in there, you can't really see, right? Now.
The time to turn the crankshaft?
These 2 here, which are the caps for the bottom of the bearings, are the connecting rods. So the bolts go here, sandwiches it in. Bearings are already out of it. Now we're going to reinstall it. So now you guys can actually see outside of the car with that little notch that there is. So there's a notch right here. The way that I install this is I put it on there first, like this, and I use my other finger over here to kind of push against it to flatten it out. And then now I just go over here and push this down, and it's in. Same thing again. Put it onto the notch like this. Finger here, make sure it's nice and even, like that, and then push down on this side. Then, let's just say you forgot which one goes to where, right? It's not a big deal. The numbers are stamped here, and we'll match it up to the top of the other side of the connecting rod. Okay. So they're numbered differently.
So if you ever lose track of it, they are numbered on the sides.
Yeah,
okay.
And they're also, you know, like I said, the design of it is they break it off, so literally it's broken apart. It only matches one way. Like you can't put this one on the other one; it won't go flat.
Mm-hmm. So you would feel it too. It wouldn't.
You would feel
it wouldn't sit flush.
Would not. Okay. Never. I mean, and the possibility that it does, even then, it's not going to sit right.
Sure.
Here, remember how we had the numbers? 5, 6, 8.
Yep.
And this one, it's 5, 6, 8. So it goes back on, and then you can see once I get this back on here, it's going to be perfectly flat and matched up. So it only goes one way. This on.
So fresh connecting bolts and fresh rod bearing.
Yes, sir. Alright. And then when you reinstall this, make sure that the numbers that are stamped right here are always facing downwards. So the connecting rods are always going to be angled upwards. So the numbers always got to be facing down. So it's kind of like right here, you see how there's two numbers? Just make sure the numbers are always on the same side. So we'll install this. Another thing that I've noticed with these bolts versus the ARP bolts, which is the ones that people use with BE bearings, is that the design of these actually have a slight angle grinded on the tip of it. So it's not actually just threads all the way up. Because even the OEM ones, they actually round it off. See it?
Yeah.
But the ARP bolts, they're not. So sometimes when it's just threads all the way up, it becomes a little issue for you to actually reinstall them.
Mm-hmm. So they're easier to use.
Way easier. Yeah. So now to reinstall these are 12.10 millimeter bolts. I use a little gun like this just to get it. This is really weak. So just to get it snug on there, and then we're going to torque it down right after. So you can see on this side clearly now. Once you actually tighten this in, it seats in there perfectly. See that?
Completely flush.
Yeah, like it doesn't look like it was even broken.
You can't even tell.
Yeah.
It looks like it's just one part.
Yeah, it looks like one
That's
piece.
crazy when it comes together. And then now you torque them down.
And now we torque them.
What do you torque them to?
55 foot-pounds.
Fancy tools?
Well, I mean, it's fancy one, but I like to use something like this because we can actually change the units. We can do Newton meters, foot-pounds, inch-pounds. We can do angles on this. So we're going to set this at 55. Another reason why I like using this is because it actually lights up, so you'll be able to see how close you are to actually tightening it down. So you'll see it light up right now once we actually get some tension. So check out this bar.
Yep.
See that? So orange, we're getting close. Green is when we're there. And then once it hits red, it's over tightened.
There you go.
55.2.
On point.
Another thing too. Bam!
That's 55.7.
Yep, as long as it's 55, we're good.
So now that we have all the rod bearings out, what do you think as far as 1 to 10? 10 being the worst, and 1 being like great, brand new?
So this is the ones on the front, which is cylinder 1.
Okay.
I'll wipe it down. This is actually bad.
That one is bad.
You see that it's uneven one area. Now I'm gonna see if I can actually touch it with my fingernail, which I have gloves on, but I can still feel it. If it catches, which it does.
So your fingernail catches on it.
If it catches on it, it's scored. Feel it.
Oh, you can get like a groove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's gonna cause a lot of issues. It looks like it's just wearing down in one area. Potentially, maybe somebody, because it looks like I said somebody replaced it before.
You think so?
I think so.
Oh, okay. So you don't think these are original?
I don't think so. These are too clean to be original.
Do you think, well, the car was a 4-owner car.
Yeah, so I think somebody's done it.
Okay.
But these are OEM. They're not WPC treated. They're not BEs. It's stamped BMW.
Okay, so they're stamped.
Yeah. Yeah, this is bad.
Scale 1 to 10?
Well, this one I would say probably like a 7.
Okay.
Just because like it's not just a little groove, you could really dig your fingernail into it.
Yeah, I can see it.
It's catching. It's pretty bad.
Okay.
But these are normal wear here and here. Just like traditional bearings, you can see that. Yep. Nothing too crazy, I would say. It is a little worn in this one, but it's not that bad.
Yeah, I see that. So the ones that sit further back tend to be worse because it takes the longest time for lubrication to get to them.
One, lubrication usually goes in the order of these. This has less pressure, but at the same time, this takes the most vibration because it is closer to your, transmission, which has either a flywheel, well, DCT has flywheel too. So that revolving flywheel tends to add more vibration to it and more revolution and more weight mass. So that's going to wear down these much faster.
So you're going to see much more wear on the bearings further back.
Yeah, always.
Okay, I gotcha. Can you wipe this one clean just so we can see it 100%? Because I want to show the difference between the front and the rear. Does this one have a groove in it too?
No, it doesn't.
No?
So,
okay.
So this is the bottom and then the upper. Upper's never really that bad, to be honest. And then in comparison with like, well, this doesn't count because it hasn't scoring, but.
How come scoring doesn't happen on all of them?
Well, this is scoring from either starvation or dirt, something that got inside your oil.
Okay. What's your opinion on...
compare these two.
Oh yeah, sorry. Now, what's your opinion on doing the test, the Blackstone Labs test?
Now, you want to do Blackstone lab test, which we just...
There is one by my coffee over there.
This one we did for a customer, right? And then we were like draining it or taking it. And he's like, yeah, I want to do a test. And I was like, wait, isn't your car competition? He's like, yeah. I'm like, so your car's LCI? He's like, yeah. But LCI bearings are aluminum, so you won't have any copper inside of it. So how it works is you basically, have a little container.
So you would put your oil in that, send it off to them.
For them to do analysis.
Okay.
Now what they do is they actually check for like, metal. So they test for either copper, aluminum, anything, any type of material. But with LCI, they're actually aluminum, so you can't really test it. The reason being is because you're going to try to look for copper, but LCI doesn't have copper.
And it's only 08 that had copper.
Yeah, 08 and early 09.
Okay.
And then obviously like pre-LCI.
So 08 and 09 used copper rod bearings, and then from then on,
they changed it to aluminum.
Aluminum.
Yeah, so when you do Blackstone tests, you won't see any copper whatsoever, which everybody's gonna be like, oh, I don't see any copper in there. It's not bad.
But it could be bad.
It could be. You don't know that. Because you're testing for copper. You're going to see aluminum in your oil no matter what, just because it's aluminum block. Everything's aluminum.
So in a nutshell, you can't really know through a test unless it's an 08 or an early 09.
Yeah, exactly.
And you shouldn't even be taking the risk if it's beyond that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I get it.
You still should be doing it regardless.
I understand that.
Even at like 20,000 miles. Because what it comes down to too is heat cycle. If you don't warm up the bearings properly and you start driving really hard, it's going to have thicker oil, because oil, once it warms up, it becomes thinner. So it won't lubricate as much. So you want to make sure you warm up your car before you drive it hard. Now, if you bought your car used, how do you know if somebody didn't drive it hard? Most people who don't know anything about cars buy like new F80s and they just drive it really hard without even knowing. They're like, oh, it's a brand new car, you just drive it hard. Brand new cars, you don't have to warm them up, but you always have to warm up your car just to have that proper thickness of oil, because the hotter it gets, the thinner it gets.
So a lot of people tend to forget that you have to warm your car up before you drive hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like you can drive off and like, you know, cruise it right away. It's gonna warm up properly. You also have proper lubrication with the newer system now. But you can't drive it hard because it's not gonna be able to supply enough lubrication at higher RPMs. Higher RPMs is high revolution. The more that you spin the motor, the more it's gonna wear down. So
what you want to do is let your car warm up for a certain amount of time in order to get everything up to temperature.
Exactly.
And then that's when you can actually push your car.
Exactly. Another thing too to take into account, which people don't realize, is even if your car has 50,000 miles, okay, let's just say you have 50,000 miles on the car, but if you're, you know, having somebody like a grandma driving the car who never takes it over 3,000 RPM, that's 3,000 revolution per minute, right? At 50,000 miles. But if it's somebody who drives really hard, and you know goes light to light, going you know all the way to red line,
yeah,
you're spinning the motor more, you're wearing it out much faster, but you're still putting the same amount of mileage, but you're putting more revolutions to it.
That makes sense.
So technically it's gonna wear down more.
The best thing you can do, I think, is for me is preventative maintenance, because you don't know who drove the car before.
Exactly.
You always want to be cautious with that.
So I always tell people, think of rod bearings as preventative maintenance that you should take into account when you're looking to buy one of these. Whether or not, if it's been done, you don't know who did it, you don't know what kind of bearings they used, and you don't know how well it was installed. There's so many factors to it, like you should still just change it no matter what. And
I think even for me, if this car even had rod bearings replaced, you know, 20,000 miles ago, now that it's out of the car and I see it, and I see ridges, and I see how worn out they are, putting those new ones in, I feel so much better.
Exactly. Like you know for a fact you can drive it hard without worrying.
Yeah.
Whereas this, it's always on the back of your head. Like let's just say they told you they did change it already, and they're like, oh yeah, I use BE, and the next thing you know, we pull it out, it's freaking OEM.
Or I go to supercharge my car, or I go to track my car, or I go to drive to Florida, and halfway through I spin a bearing. This is what we don't want. So I think this is all preventative maintenance. I highly recommend it from my standpoint, because I'm not a mechanic, but I've seen you do all your work, and I think this with rod bearings and throttle actuators, and then if you have that fuel breather valve problem, what other things are big with these cars? Because I know a lot of people that watch this right now are probably trying to buy a car, an S65 or an M3.
Yeah.
They want to know what else is it that people want to watch out for.
The other things besides that would be like motor mounts, of course, which a lot of people neglect. And then the other thing that a lot of people tend to forget about with these cars is spark plugs.
Okay.
Like
we just recently did that.
Yeah, remember?
Yeah.
So a lot of people are driving these cars, it doesn't misfire heavily, they're not boosted, so they don't really require too much to jump that arc. Now the thing with these cars is like people tend to ride it all the way up to like 60, 70,000 miles until they finally change it, until it starts to really misfire and throw code. But these cars, when it actually starts to misfire slightly, it's going to pull timing. And when it pulls timing, you lose performance and MPG. So how's your MPG now?
Mine went up by 2.5 miles per gallon, because I was getting 13 miles per gallon and my E90 would get 16 miles per gallon. I was supercharged.
Yeah.
This is NA. So now it's at 15.5 roughly.
Yeah.
So it's
much
right
better,
there.
right?
Much better. Much better.
So yeah, MPG.
Yeah.
Also, you know, you're getting knocked every time it misfires, pulling timing. So that stuff can damage motors as well, which people don't realize. Over time it will wear it down until it really throws a hard misfire.
Yeah.
But potentially when that does happen, it could detonate, which can cause an engine failure.
Sure. So I think off of the top of my head, let's say somebody buys an E90X M3, whether it's 20,000 miles or 100,000 miles, do you think that roughly between an investment of 5 to 7 grand is reasonable to prevent an engine failure, to prevent throttle actuators, rod bearings? I mean, you think like 5 to 7 grand is where it sits to get everything sorted out?
100%. And I think people should always take that into factor when you're purchasing a car. Regardless of the price, take into account like, oh, you're gonna need to spend this much more just to do these things and prevent it from happening. Not like, oh, you have a budget for $30,000, you're gonna try to find a car for $30,000. You wanna find a car that's like $25,000 so that you can spend the additional $5,000 to do this prior.
To make it last even longer.
Yeah, like you gotta make sure like you're taking that to account.
And I don't think people take rod bearings seriously enough, because when you spin a bearing, I wish we had it. Do you have any pictures of a spun motor?
I have.
I don't need it now, but I can insert it in the video.
I'll show you. I actually have a car that I actually did bearings on. This was back in 2014. That's how long I've been doing it for.
And it was an S65?
It was a S65 E90, and it was an LCI, or no, pre-LCI.
Also, it's copper.
Yeah, so it's copper.
Okay.
It actually spun. And I have pictures of 4 bearings that I removed from it.
Wow.
And you can see how bad it was. The bearing spun And do you see the thickness of this?
Yeah.
The one that I pulled out on this very edge, which is where it normally wears down, was like 2 millimeters smaller, and this is probably 3 millimeters. So it was a 1 millimeter thickness.
So there's almost no material.
Like paper.
Oh
yeah,
no.
It's pretty bad.
So we'll insert those photos, and I'm assuming it blew the motor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we
we'll
had to
put those
rebuild the
photos.
whole motor, change out the crankshaft, literally pull the motor out and rebuilt it.
And I'm assuming 10,000 plus.
Oh, it was 25 back then.
25.
This was back in 2014 when motors were going for like 25K.
So essentially, I paid 30,000 for this car, and I don't know if I've shared that here, but I paid 30 grand for this car. So if my motor blew, I would essentially buy another M3.
Yeah.
With that price.
Because you're paying right now going rates for these motors probably 10 to 15,000.
Yeah.
If you can find a used one, which you probably can. You want to get one with warranties to make sure it's good. But when you're doing it, right, you're swapping the motor, you're like, okay, I'm already doing this, might as well change out all the gaskets. You're already there, might as well do bearings.
Yeah.
But then you got to pay for the labor.
And the thing is, though, too, is I want people to know in this video that taking these things much more seriously is going to help them in the long run, whether it's resale value or peace of mind.
Yeah.
Which I got both of those. I got my money back on my E90,
Yep.
and I had peace of mind to drive harder.
Yeah.
Which these cars are meant to be driven hard.
Yep.
And I'm scared to go over 5,000 RPM in this car since I bought it.
Yep.
And now that the new ones are in, I can go have some fun.
Yep.
Last thing, is there a break-in period for new rod bearings?
So theoretically speaking, people always say there is a break-in period, but what we do is we apply a lot of assembly lube. These don't need a break-in period. They're literally just bearings. No matter what, it's just gonna spin on it. There's no coating that you gotta wear off. These bearings do have special coating just for initial startup, that's it.
Okay.
If we're doing like piston and rings and whatnot, then yeah, the rings need to expand and seat properly. These don't. These are just literally install them, drive it as hard as you want.
The last thing of the last thing. The choice of the manufacturer that makes my rod bearings, ACL, why that brand?
So ACL, the reason why we went with ACL, obviously you know BE is proven. We use BEs on your last car, and I normally go with an offer BE, but the problem with BE is they're always back ordered, and the bearings themselves $684. These bearings, well not these, but the ACL is the exact same specs. So they have more tolerance, they have the exact same material, and then we use Carrillo bolts, which is cheaper than ARP, which are the exact same specs as well, but it's a fraction of the price, and they're always in stock.
So all the bearings and everything else, as far as quality goes, is there any sacrifice there?
None.
None?
Zero. So I think a lot of people are sticking to BE, and they're probably going to ask why ACL and why not BE. But to be honest, it's the same material, same thing. It's just much cheaper, and you can get it any day of the time. It's always available. But BE, you know, it's proven. A lot of people want to go with what's proven. But obviously, with this on your car now, we'll be able to show them and prove to them that these are the exact same specs. Now, people who don't know anything about engine building, ACL has been out there for years and decades.
We have the box, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I posted a picture on my Instagram of it.
They've been out for years.
Yeah.
And BE has been out there for a long time as well. So a lot of guys do ACL bearings on engine builds. Like if you look up ACL on, you know, actual builds, you'll see like race cars use them. You'll see like even S63 builds you're doing them. Like N54s, people upgrade to ACL. A lot of guys who actually upgrade these to like a stroker kit, they actually use ACL main bearings. So they're not something new, all right, guys?
They've been around.
They've been around.
Yeah, because I think that's one thing people will ask is that BE bearings with ARP is like the most popular go-to. And I get it. There's credibility behind that, but there's back order, there's pricing, there's a lot. So I'm happy to be someone who can show that because I have trust in you that you pick the right parts. And it's just, I think for me down the line, nothing's going to happen. But if they've been around for a long time and they're using those on stroker kits, why do people don't need to give them for it?
Yeah, it's all the same thing.
I understand that.
Material's the same, thickness is the same. Hey, it's finally raining.
Is it?
And then the material's the same, thickness is the same, tolerance is the same. There's no sacrifice whatsoever. The only thing that you're going to gain from it is cost.
Sure.
These ACL bearings is like $298. The BE, they're $697, roughly.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's half the price.
I understand.
Bolts is like, I think these bolts are $100 cheaper as well. So, I mean, if you guys can save money, you can spend more on other mods as well.
Yeah, that's the best part. So now I think I want to see the motor mounts.
Yep.
Want to pull those out?
fluids here too, so. Closed end. It's a double end, so we can flip it around, whatever. But it's a 16 millimeter nut that's above here.
And it's just one single one?
Yeah, it's just one.
You think that bolt has been moved since the car was built?
I don't think so.
No?
It's pretty tight. All right. So, now that we got that loose.
And this is the bad side, right?
Yeah. So we're gonna remove this one first.
Okay. I didn't even see where it went.
So you can see right here where it's separated. It's not supposed to be like that.
Yeah, there's too much play, right?
Yeah. This is actually, every time the engine moves, you actually floor it, it lifts this side, so it's constantly going up.
Okay.
The other thing is you see this area right here?
Yep.
That was actually sitting on your motor mount bracket. So you can actually see it wearing it down.
Oh yeah, the actual part that it sits on.
So that's why you're getting vibration.
You see that? Oh my gosh. Oh, this one's pretty heavy. Dang. Well, it probably has to be because it's holding the freaking motor. Yeah, this thing is crusty.
Right motor mounts are exactly the same. This company is the same company that is the OEM supplier. So I'm going to show you guys the difference in thickness. So when this wears down, it starts to collapse. Remember I was telling you about that? And your motor is sitting much lower. Look at the height difference.
So that shows you how much weight was on it for how long, and it completely wore it down.
Yep. So
yeah, you can really see. Well, that's brand new, and then that's 69,000 miles.
Yeah. I mean, look at this thing's tearing apart.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
I really hope everything holds up today. Not that it shouldn't, but this is the first time that it is going out for the first time.
And like I said, I raised the suspension.
It's kind of cool, but it's raining outside right now. Like I said this morning, it doesn't rain in Southern California. This is the first time I've seen rain, I think in probably 6 months maybe. And it's officially raining. We just made a video of this thing too. I had Mike get his first TikTok. We got TikTok for, check it out. Precision Dynamics, their first video. Yeah, you guys can go check them out. Can you explain the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, so what we do is we actually crank over the motor but don't let it run. That way it actually rotates the engine, lubricating all the new parts that we just installed. Because when we remove the connecting rods, we allowed the oil passage, which we were explaining earlier in the video. Those holes, once you remove the bearings, there's no longer oil inside of there, so we don't want it to starve on initial startup. It's not 100% necessary, but we just do as precaution, just so that we lubricate it well.
And that's called priming, right?
Priming.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
okay.
just priming.
Yeah.
So, Spencer,
So,
hop in the car and you tell me how does it idle.
I want to see how it feels. Okay.
On the lift. How's it vibrate?
So what do you do now? You let it run for a bit?
Now we're going to let it warm up all the way, so we give it a proper heat cycle before revving it, driving it whatsoever. We get it all the way up to a normal operating temperature, which is about 220 or so. And then once it gets to 220, we'll also, now it's on the lift, we'll bring it up, inspect for any leaks, things like that. And then once it's fully warmed up, we'll give it a little bit of a rev to see if there's any weird, odd sounds. Then after that, test drive. That's it.
Take it off the rack?
Yeah.
Car's been sitting here warming up.
Yeah.
Over there. It's on top of the rod bearings. JPEG Built just gave me new license plate light bulbs. If you guys want to buy those, check out the description. He just hooked it up with the new license plate light bulbs, which, excuse my trunk, is kind of dirty, but. So we just finished up here doing rod bearings, the motor mounts, and a bunch of other things, including the license plate light bulbs, which you can see are super bright. I just wanted to say a huge humble thank you to Mike and his team and everyone here at Precision Dynamics for doing the rod bearings. The motor mounts completely changed the car. I just drove it. There's no longer any vibration in the car. That's what was causing it at stoplights. There's zero vibration. So I'm moving to Florida soon, and I'm gonna miss you guys completely, but thank you for all the hard work on the car and taking care of all my cars for me. I'm still here for another 30 days, so doing throttle actuators very soon. But if you guys want to, check out Precision Dynamics if you want to get pricing on rod bearings. Anything from performance to maintenance, they can do everything. So once again, thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.